Okay, welcome, Zach. Okay, great. So everyone is joining and we will be on our way. Zach, please, if you can help me look into Facebook. Something is frozen here. I didn't hit the final stream. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's super exciting to have you join us again. Thank you for joining the October edition of the PhET Africa Share and Discuss webinar series. As always, my name is Olushola Olateju, Africa STEM specialist, and I'm excited to welcome you to this edition. Today, we have an interesting topic before us, and I can't wait to get us started. We have our speaker already with us, and we will get started in just a second. But before then, we'll do our housekeeping. This webinar is brought to you by the PhET Interactive Simulation Project at the University of Colorado Boulder in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. It holds every third Wednesday where we bring in seasoned researchers from across the continent who have conducted some research around the use of interactive simulations or effective pedagogies to support the teaching and learning of math and science on the continent. And we deliberate, just discuss on this platform once a month, and then of course take the conversation to our community on Facebook, which I'm going to share with you in a bit. So this is what the time looks like in your time zone. And each of the recording is made available on our playlist on Facebook. So if you miss any recording or you want to continue with past conversations and future conversations, we invite you to visit the playlist on YouTube, and you can definitely catch up and continue to learn and contribute to the conversation. And while the presentation is ongoing, we will not be able to take questions. So I would encourage you to please use the question and answer feature here on Zoom to drop your questions while the presentation, our speaker is making his presentation. Or if you're connecting on Facebook, please drop that in the question and answer, and my colleague and I will be looking out for that to be sure that all of your questions get attended to. And finally, this is our community on Facebook. So I invite you as well to visit Facebook and search for PhET Educators Africa, where you can, of course, connect with speakers as well as the community across the continent to get questions answered, but also get first-hand information on activities and events as they become available. Just before I introduce our speaker today, I would want us, I see a few people already dropping in the chat. I would want to know where you're connecting from. Welcome, Mohammed. Welcome, Beth. So please, I would love that you write in the chat your name and the country you're connecting from. Would love to know you. Would love to know where you're connecting and where you're joining us from. So today, without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for today as we consider the topic, effective teaching of chemistry in rural context using PhET simulation. Our speaker is none other than Sebatana Judicial, who is a chemistry lecturer at the Northwest University in South Africa. He holds a PhD in science education from the University of Witwatersrand and is also a member of research groups such as the Self-Directed Learning at the Northwest University and the Pedagogical Content Knowledge Research Group at WIT. His research interests are around problem-based learning, blended learning, and pedagogical content knowledge in science education. He's also a member of the UNESCO Chair on Multimodal Learning and Open Education Resources Executive Committee, as well as a member of the Southern Africa Association for Research in Mathematics, Science, and Technology Education Research Capacity Building Committee. We're super excited to have you join us today, and I'm particularly looking forward to today's conversation. I'll hand the mic over to you now as you make your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Zola, and thank you, Zach. I might want to highlight that Please note, I don't know if you can hear me properly because it seems like at the office here, the generators are running slow because of load shedding. So that's why maybe I might still be a bit darker, but I'm sure it will kickstart very soon. But can I confirm that you can hear me, Sola?
Yes, we hear you good. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And then as Sola has already introduced, the topic which we'll look at today will be on how we can effectively teach chemistry in the rural context using PhET simulations. And I believe at this point we might have an idea on the PhET simulation.
You can share.
Can you see my screen now, Sola?
Yes, we see your screen, but you can just go full screen and you will be on your way.
All right.
Perfect. There you go.
Okay. So I believe at this point we might have an idea or maybe even a clear picture of what a PhET simulation is, but it's the platform which we use to simulate our teaching and learning, especially for some of the concepts which are on natural sciences and mathematics. And in natural sciences, we will be referring to the physics, to chemistry, to biology, earth science, and of course, mathematics. And we should note that this PhET, we can actually access it for free online, and we don't necessarily have to pay for it. So this will be the logo that you will see if you are trying to download a PhET, but you'll have to actually download. And I would like to first address the point where we say, why should maybe we use PhET in chemistry? Why should we use PhET simulations in chemistry? We think chemistry, if we look at literature, we get to understand that chemistry is a very abstract subject. We can see, for instance, on the picture that is depicted here, that there's an argument around people to say, if we have a snowman or if we have ice, should we put a coat around the ice? Will it keep it frozen or will it melt it? So it's just to show a debate around issues that at times, when we talk from the point of privilege where we actually know content, we can think it's an easy answer when it actually it's not. So PhET simulations, I believe, tries to address some of these abstract concepts. And in order to look at the use of PhET simulations, we ask a question: how can we effectively teach chemistry in a rural context using PhET simulations? And now, in attempt to answering the posed question, in my case, a topic of the 3 states of matter was chosen for various reasons because, as you might know, I would like to believe that this is the basic concept in chemistry. When we learn chemistry, first we have to go through the states of matter, and this topic is not only necessarily taught in grade 10 as I'm exploring it in our presentation, is actually taught from lower grades, but it seems that it still presents a lot of confusion and it still remains abstract. So therefore, a grade 10 physical sciences class in a rural school was used for this study. This is just one school, one grade 10 class. And in this class, maybe before we move, we have to know that the rurality that we bring here is, we would be familiar that in our South African context, in rural schools, we might have issues of having larger classes. And now when we have larger classes at times, we might have a problem, maybe teaching or dealing with the learners when there are many in a class. We might be lacking some of the resources to actually convey the concepts which we are trying to teach, especially in science. So therefore, this is where PhET simulations actually come into play. And therefore, when this was done, this activity was actually adapted from the PhET, because PhET simulations actually offer us with some of the activities which we can use to teach. So when we use PhET, we don't have to worry about how am I going to use the PhET? What questions will I ask the learners? How will I actually try to check prior knowledge or spark the interest? So therefore, in this case, this activity was used where the teacher divided a class of 50 learners into small groups and then provided them with the gadgets, or even in some schools, they would use a projector and a laptop, and that way everyone can focus. So the reason for having sometimes learners working in small groups when they're using technology is that we would know that not necessarily be very maybe knowledgeable about the use of technology. So therefore, when you have them in the group, each one might have at least something to say which can speed up the process of learning. And when we looked at the findings of using PhET simulations in such context, is that because we lack resources there, sometimes we convey these concepts, but we do not, or we might not actually reach the point which we all want to reach. For instance, when learners were told to use oxygen molecules to be in different states of matter, as we saw on the previous slides, learners were surprised to see that actually oxygen can be in another different state, or in another state, because in their head, oxygen can only be in a gaseous phase, but they could not comprehend the part where oxygen is in a maybe solid state. So they were shocked, and it sparked a lot of debate between the learners and the teacher that how is that even possible? Mind you, these are grade 10 learners. So I believe with this finding, it teaches us many things, because when you look at, for instance, we teach maybe the periodic table of elements. That's one of the basic tools which we have to talk about every moment we talk about chemistry. But we talk about periodic table being divided into maybe different even state, because if you look at it, we talk about here we have metals, here we have semi-metals, these ones are gases. But now, can we have all those in different states? So PhET simulation gives us the opportunity to be able to show that matter can actually exist in all the three states of matter. So for instance, also when we ask learners, even students, the university level, when you ask them if do we have maybe, for instance, gold in our body, it becomes a mind-boggling question, because they cannot think of gold or silver as being something that is in the system, because sometimes they don't even read nutrition on the packages of the food that we eat. You hear someone is lacking iron, someone is lacking magnesium, but in chemistry, when we teach those, we teach them as metals. So that's why it becomes kind of a problem when we have to discuss some of these matters. I remember during my time doing honors at PhET with Professor Marisa, she asked the question, should we continue to refer to the periodic table of elements as periodic table of elements, or should we rather call it periodic table of atoms? Because when we talk about periodic table of elements in a chemistry class, we hardly look at periodic table of elements or those as elements. We look at them as atoms of those elements. So these are just some of the debates which comes up as we are teaching using PhET simulations. Another important finding was that learners were happy to learn about moving particles which were actually moving, because normally when we teach, or under usual circumstances, when we teach 3 states of matter, we are going to discuss the spaces between particles, and then we draw stationary circles on the board. And then we want to say, although this is what I'm drawing, just know that these particles are moving. But it's kind of, it can be demanding for someone to tell them that, for instance, even in the solid phase, to say, no, these particles are moving, but they look stationary, but they are vibrating on themselves. It's kind of a difficult thing, whereas we can actually use PhET simulations to actually display what we are trying to discuss, or what we want the learners to actually know. So these are just some of the important aspects.
Unfortunately, I think we lost Judicial briefly there. We just allow for some minutes for him to come back and then complete his presentation. But while at that, Zach, do you hear me? I would just like a confirmation before.
Yes, I can hear you, Shola.
Yeah, so I think while we're waiting to come back, I don't know if anyone would be willing to share their own experience as well, or what you've learned, or some of the things you found out, especially if you teach in a rural context. Today's conversation primarily focuses on how we can navigate some of the unique situations or scenarios we find in rural context to, of course, improve the teaching and learning of math and science in those spaces. So does anyone have some bit of experience? Zach, do you have some bit of thoughts to share? Especially, I know you've spoken a bit about the situation in, okay, we'll just hold it back. Welcome back to TCL. We lost you there, but yeah, we're just holding forth for you. Welcome back. You can dive right in. But you need to share.
Sorry about that network. I think electricity just came back, so my network also was rebooting. So
that's fine. It's great to have you back. But just share your slide and we can dive right back in.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to believe this is where you lost me, Shola.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, just to highlight, maybe to recap, these are just some of the greatest findings which came about regarding learners being that actually oxygen can exist in a different state than actually being a gas. And learners also were happy to learn about that maybe the moving particles in various states, because at times, like I said, we resort to actually only drawing circles on the board in order to explain the 3 states of matter in a maybe submicroscopic level. So that's why the PhET simulations gives us that opportunity to actually talk about what is happening with the gaseous phase, or what particles are doing, or what is the behavior of particles, because we will discuss the spaces in between, which those spaces also can bring some of the misconceptions, because it almost as if those particles were never touched, they are just far distant from each other. So, but I believe with PhET simulations, I think a good example is the picture which has been shown here. And when we are looking at in a rural context, there are certain challenges which are being presented, or which we experienced, or experienced by the teachers there. but I wouldn't refer to them as challenges with the use of PhET. It seems the use of PhET is not very difficult for our teachers and the learners, but the issues which are there are more contextual. For instance, there was a highlight on time, like when you have to use a PhET simulation, sometimes it takes time because teachers highlighted that in our rural schools, equipment, or rather the gadgets, maybe projector, laptop, computer, those things are not mounted in the classroom. You don't find them readily available. So when the teacher has to go to class to teach, they have to carry these gadgets, or they have to carry the laptop, they carry the projector, then they must still plug it, then they must still beam it. So it takes time to do that, we know that when you are a teacher, time is very much important. So sometimes our periods can be 1 hour, sometimes they can be 30 minutes. It differs from one school to another. So these are just the challenges when we teach with technology such as PhET, the issue of time. And the other issue which was being highlighted a lot, I'm sure we experienced that right now during our presentation, was the issue of load shedding with our electricity in South Africa. But this is not more about the rural context, but I do not know. I have heard arguments that maybe the people in the rural can experience more load shedding than others, but I do not have effects on that. So, but load shedding actually affects us using the PhET, because if you don't have power, it can be difficult for you to use maybe the projector and the laptop and the likes. So context will be connectivity, because when we are in our rural places, it seems network is a problem. So if you were to use PhET and then as a teacher, you are trying to download it, you might have challenges doing so because of the network. So these are just some of the things which exist, which are there. I do not know best ways maybe to deal with these challenges, because I remember if you go back to the issue of time, some of the teachers in the schools were suggesting if maybe we can have our projectors mounted, everything is readily available for you to just walk in class and start teaching. The problem is the security, because there's issue of crime as well. So people actually steal some of these things. They break into the school, they take these gadgets. So I remember even during the time when myself and the Northwest Province, we were giving tablets and laptops to schools in the province. And in some schools, when I visited there, we went to check the use of these gadgets. Gadgets were not there because people raided the school, they took all the gadgets. So there were no gadgets. Learners are being robbed on their way to school or from school, they take those gadgets. So I remember even one school in Swaziland, I believe, they had to take those gadgets, have a security company where they are being locked at the vault somewhere. When the school starts, the company must come and deliver them at school. So those are just some of the challenges which we have, but I do not know if these challenges are also the same in urban areas. So nonetheless, I would like to say I will stop here and open for questions. Sola, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Judicial, for your presentation. This is a good time to drop your questions, contributions, and suggestions into the chat, or you can use the question and answer feature, and we'll be happy to get to that in a bit. Thank you so much for your presentation, Judicial. I have some thoughts, and I'm sure Zach might have a thing or two as well. Two things I'm taking away from this. There's the rather unique situation about protecting, and I don't think this is unique to the rural context alone. I've seen in urban cases where head of schools in trying to ensure that devices vested to the schools do not go bad under their watch, basically lock the laboratories or lock the computer rooms away. And that, of course, deters or stops students from using the investment in technology in schools. As much as it might be a bit more pronounced in the rural, I think it's a common thing. It just plays out in different ways in terms of people are, it only speaks to the limited investment and all the related issues around protecting and maximizing the investment in technology. But just like you rightly said, of course, you've gone out ahead to see how teachers are working and using technology in spite of these constraints. So the debate is more, yes, the challenges are real. They stay at us in the face, but in spite of that, we need to innovate and find ways to work around that, which was partly why your work was particularly interesting. But I would love to see what other things, before I go back to the question and answer, and one thing I was going to add as well quickly is, one other scenario that comes to mind, especially when it comes to managing time, one of the challenges you also mentioned, with teachers having to move devices and projectors around, or even tablets before classes. And I'm just sharing this widely. One of the things that worked in I'll say pilot project that we did was, in standard laboratories, we have what we call the laboratory attendant, perhaps, right? That would prepare a lab ahead of time before students come in, or teachers, the lecturer or the teacher can focus on the teaching and then preparing the lab and also clean up afterwards. Someone else is helping and ensuring that does not suffer. And I think that model also is something that has proven effective in certain areas. And that can take any form. In many schools or in many contexts, they are what we call perhaps laboratory prefect to manage some of those things. Students can fill in, or if we have sufficient resources where there's someone who is managing the laboratory, we can outsource that part of the work and ensure they can help fill in that. So we're focused on ensuring students are ready and they are either getting the laboratories ready before. So what we did back then was, when a session is wrapping up, someone else is mounting the projector, not the teacher. So the teacher can start engaging the student on top of the hour. And it takes about maybe 5 minutes or less because someone else is focused on just ensuring like things are mounted and up and running. And that helped manage, that helped manage the time in many of those in many of those contexts. I'm going to go to the chat now, to the question and answer. I see a couple of questions are getting dropped. I want us to get through that before, maybe I'll come back to Zach as well before I then share a couple of other thoughts or some of the experiences I've had around, especially in the rural context. I see Esther, I see Josephine, right? Printing out pre-lab activity and so could be really challenging going to the population of students and the cost of printing. Yes, printing can be a challenge. And did you notice that as well, especially when it comes to engaging the students? Did you have to work? What did you notice with teachers? Were they working with printed materials, or were they writing some of the things on the board for students to interact with? Or what? And not, there's no wrong or right way, but what were the things you noticed?
Okay. Firstly, also on the first point which you made about having someone else coming to do the work and preparing the stuff before the teaching and learning can take place, that part becomes difficult in a rural school because most of our rural schools, they do not actually pay school fees, and therefore they cannot hire someone to do their job. So in South Africa, we have different levels of schools. Some schools, they pay even up to maybe even 20,000, but it's a public school. So you realize in that school, they might be able to hire someone to help in that regard. But in a rural school where they are not paying any fees, there's no one. The teacher must actually find time. If it means the period is before break time, the teacher will have to eat lunch quickly and use some of the time of the lunch to actually go prepare for class if that's the case. And then with regards to the printing also, printing is a very big problem also in our schools. So having to print for, especially now for 50 learners, mind you, this is just one class and it's not all the grade 10 classes which are in that school. So it can be very difficult and it's not an easy thing because we are, like we said, we are lacking resources in our rural schools. So really, I think it's a challenge which just remains to exist over the years. So I'm not sure also how it can be solved. But in my case, when we did the study, some of these challenges, I think, were sort of minimized because we were busy working with the Department of Education in the province. And so the principals were in on it. And then we were trying to see if this is the best way. And principals also were happy to receive these resources. So everyone was doing their best to make sure that the learners are actually catered for and schools are. So in that case, the printing part was not much of a problem, but I know because also as a teacher, which in my case, I was a teacher, I was teaching physical sciences in an urban school in Gauteng. So it was still also, it's not a smooth process actually to do printing. That's why in some schools in South Africa, in January, they request the learners to bring like a bundle of papers or type the A4 for printing. So those are just some of the mechanisms which maybe principals are trying to make to assist in that regard. So maybe in some schools you might find out they are bringing printing cartridges, I don't know, but probably those are just some of the ways. I do not know if maybe colleagues, maybe in the chats might be having different ways on how they deal with such issues as maybe one of the guests has mentioned the problem. Shola?
Shola, you're on mute.
Yeah, Zach, I was asking, thank you. Do you have any thoughts or reaction before I go back to the chat?
And not really, but I just want to highlight what Sebatana is saying about printing is a huge challenge in rural areas. Schools, teachers, and learners will not have the luxury of having a printer. But what I've seen teachers do is they would display a simulation on a tablet or on their phone and then get learners around it. And then they have a discussion, about it, or just write the prompt questions on the board and then allow learners to like explore the simulation. But the question I wanted to have for Sebatana is the question around like in rural context, how do you like pose questions to guide students in exploration of chemistry topics? Because in rural areas, you'll find like you have like large class sizes. As a teacher, you are at the front and you have 80, 100 learners, and you can't even move in between the learners. So how do you like pose questions and ask questions to guide students to explore the simulation and in the end be able to achieve the learning objective that you've set?
In our case, Zach, what we did was we were also partnering the use of PhET simulations with using problem-based learning, which requires our learners to be grouped because we believe that learning takes place properly when you are working with someone and you are hearing another person's ideas. So therefore, learners they were grouped work in groups of 5, and those which also had maybe cell phones could also bring their cell phones to use. But what we did was we were actually giving them tablets so that we can minimize the case of phones and being stolen and all of that. So with that, we were just we used those activities which are shown here. This activity actually was adapted from the PhET simulation, because after you register an account on PhET, you tell them if you're a teacher or you are doing it for the school or for just an individual or whatever, or a learner. Therefore, they give you access to the material which is being used by other people or which they have also developed. So this way, some of the issues were draw particles in a solid state. After they draw the particles in solid state, they were supposed to pump maybe the same particles now using PhET simulations so that they can observe the difference and then they can tell is what they drew exactly as the same as the ones which are on the PhET simulation. Because from that point, that's when now learners start saying, no, this is a solid state. This is my solid state, but it seems in this solid state, there are still spaces in between the particles, or particles are still moving. They do not seem to stand still, although the temperature is low. So that's when some of the debates started to say, no, actually, how do some of these solid state matters start maybe melting? So they constantly have energy, they are constantly vibrating, although they are in a solid state. So this is how we were doing it. So it was just spiking that debate for learners to actually start debating. So even some of the debates, I remember when I was doing it here, one student asked if, so these particles, because there are spaces in between, so does it mean that in water, if there are those spaces in between particles, is there where the oxygen is stored for the one that the fish maybe will be taking when it's in the water? Or is it taking the oxygen that is on the H2O? So there are lots of questions that's coming up when we use this PhET simulation. So for us, maybe to answer your question, is I think working in groups and some of the assisting questions which we get from PhET. So people don't have to stress about designing questions. Questions are already there. Just go into the PhET and then you choose a question which you think you like for your context, or you can simply adapt or change it for your context. I don't know if I answered you, Zach.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll move into the question and answer section. There's quite a number of questions. So the first question from Islam Hussein says, does this valuable interactive webinar give a participation certificate? The answer to that is we don't give certificate for participation in the webinar. However, we have a PhET virtual course that is on our website. We also have another one on Coursera that you can get on and do the course and get the certificate. The other question is from Jeanette, and Jeanette has two questions. And the first question is, I think this is your question as your question. Why were you interested in rural areas? Do you think that the use of simulations couldn't work with urban students? That is her first question.
Should I answer it first or wait for the second one?
Let me ask the second question. She says, how have you helped the students construct their knowledge?
Okay. The interest for rural was simply because in the rural, as I mentioned earlier, we do not have enough resources. So what I did was I worked, as I mentioned earlier, I worked with the Northwest Department of Education, particularly the Maths Science and Technology Unit, MST unit. So because those are the people who hold the technological gadget in the province. So we worked with the schools, so we were giving away these resources to the schools. But now the question that comes is when you give someone a resource to say, hey, I'm gonna give you a laptop to use, and I'm gonna give you a projector, and I'm gonna give you tablets. Now the question is, how do we know that the gadgets which you are providing someone will be used? Do they know how to use them? What exactly do you expect them to do with the gadgets? So then we had to go out of the way again to go through some of the tools which we can use to teach, because some of the things which I omitted maybe from this was also the issue of using PhET simulations to guide even the practical experiments. Because when we do, for instance, I'm sure some of you maybe might be familiar with an experiment which we conduct in the lab in chemistry called a cooling curve or heating curve. So initially you think, but it's easy to do that type of an experiment. Just go find ice cubes, do this. Because at times we talk from the point of privilege until you had to ask someone to do it, and then you realize there are no resources. The school does not even have, it's far from town. Like I said, there's a school which is about over 100 kilometers from town to maybe go buy ice cubes or to get a fridge which can hold as much ice cubes. So therefore, when we use PhET, PhET allows this issue of the 3 states of matter. So the same way the topic was chosen from the grade 10, because grade 10 starts, it's an entry level for senior and FET in South Africa. So it's a build-up, further education and training. It starts grade 10, then grade 11, then grade 12. Learners will be expected to go to the university. So we wanted to take the lowest grade in this phase so that we can explore the situation. So this PhET was able to assist in terms of the lab experiment, because you can record the temperature, you can see what is happening during the phase changes. So therefore, it was able to assist a lot in that regard. But in urban schools, of course, I believe actually they know how to use resources. I believe they have resources. I remember recently I was in Spain, where they said in their schools, actually, they have all the resources they need, but unfortunately teachers are not using them, because their issue is those resources are a lot, and apparently too much of everything becomes a problem. So us here, we are struggling because we lack resources in our rural schools, but they are struggling because they have a lot of resources. So this was the reason for choosing the rural context. I don't know if your question was answered. And in terms of trying to help learners to construct knowledge, we can just simply look at the findings. For instance, I only picked the 2 for this discussion to say now learners are asking questions like, but how can oxygen now be solid? So I don't know if from anyone's point we can say, did the learners start understanding? Does it bring any change? But if the learner can ask this question in grade 10, when they have been taught 3 states of matter from grade 6, only today when we use PhET simulations, they argue the point that, no, why do we have this state? Now we discuss the 3 states of matter, but if I had to tell them about the petrol and I say, oh, they say the petrol was frozen, it will become again mind-boggling. Why was it frozen? From what was it frozen? Because I thought that thing cannot be frozen. So these are some of the questions we get. We hear, for instance, in the world today, there would be issues on the resources. You hear one country needs a certain type of mineral. But now, how do we transport this mineral? For instance, how do we transport gold? How are we going to do it? Some can say, no, let's melt it and then we transport it as a liquid. So these are some of the things which a learner starts understanding, hopefully, to say, actually, now I get what 3 states of matter is. It's not just a book concept where you decide 3 states of matter, gas, liquid, gas. Any matter can mostly exist in 3 states. So I would like to believe that we did actually help learners with these simulations. I'm not sure, but that would be my inference.
Thank you so much. There's another question from Tabot Delphine from Cameroon, and her question is, do you also take into consideration inviting parents for assistance through parent-teacher union in order to bridge some barriers to integrating technological resources such as PhET?
No, honestly, I only recently I saw a study, but I think the study was in the USA, where they are doing the study involving the parents. So I think I took an interest in that, but it's not my field of expertise in terms of research. I've never even also thought of a research where I can actually involve parents, but it seems the research which includes learners' parents is gaining momentum. So I think it's one of the fields which I'm yet to explore. So we have not done that. Even I think when we give these learners tablets, we don't even ask the parents first. We give them a tablet or whatever. The mother probably just sees the child arriving home with a tablet, and they say it's coming from school. I'm supposed to use it for the whole year and return it by the end of the year, which in some cases it never happens. The returning never takes place. But I think that's a very interesting question, because I can see this issue of parents and learner research is very much required. And thank you very much for that question.
Thank you. Elijah asks, is there anywhere to ask for technological aid for remote and rural schools without the equipment?
I'm not sure whether this person maybe also is from South Africa, but also it's funny how I started my teaching career in Gauteng, and I don't know now how they work, but in the Northwest, because every province sort of have their own system at times as to how things are being handled, because everything is taken as a contextual issue. So in the Northwest province, we do have a Maths Science and Technology unit, MST unit. It deals a lot with the use of technology. It assists schools in that regard. So even with the remote issue, like everything, I think the internet, schools now are being given internet. In one school, I remember we really had to fight for that school to get internet, because it seems like not simply internet, the connection itself, even teachers in that school could not even get phone calls in their cell phones because there's simply no network. So that's the department which assists with all those gadgets there. So I'm not sure which province, or maybe if the person is also even in South Africa, but if the person is in South Africa, I'm sure I can engage further, and I can connect the people to the relevant offices which deals with these gadgets for schools.
Thank you. Beth has a comment here, and she says, I understand that Limpopo and Mpumalanga have the most buy-in on PhET. Getting the teachers to use PhET in privileged schools remains a major challenge. I am so impressed that teachers with so few resources are able to make a plan. That's a very interesting comment. Do you have any comment on that comment from Beth?
I think I'm happy that I didn't also know that in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, they are big buy-ins on the PhET. The issue is that it's just that maybe my plan was not to mention that issue in this platform, but is that our curriculum stipulates that we have to use PhET simulations to enhance our teaching and learning. However, much as it's there, the teachers say when the department visits in the schools, there's nowhere where they ask them if they used PhET, if they know how to use PhET. It's just something that even in the meetings, hey, use PhET, use this, whatever, but there's no follow-up. But this is just maybe one case, because at the end of the day, I ended up working very closely with about 40 teachers. So I don't know if 40 teachers can be a good overview of the whole province of about 1,000 teachers. So, but if that's the case, that side, I think I'm also very happy to hear that they can actually work very hard to push PhET. So maybe they just need mechanism on how they can make sure that teachers are actually following through on PhET. You might find out is because there's lack of knowledge on PhET and how to actually use it. Because at times we just assume someone can use something when we tell them, hey, here's a projector, use it. And when they don't use it, you want to say, but this thing is not difficult, just plug it and it beams. You know, sometimes we talk from, like I said, from the point of privilege to say, this thing is easy to use. So maybe it's because they lack the knowledge on that.
Awesome. Brian Siumbwa has also a very interesting comment, and he says, teacher schedule is a challenge. When one has back-to-back classes, it's difficult to prepare and use PhET in the classroom. Do you have any comment about his comment, about Brian's comment?
Yes, the issue of time, as I mentioned on one of the challenges, one teacher said, if I'm sitting there, I'm trying to use PhET, and sometimes, because there's a teacher, I think, who said something like, she prepared properly for the use of PhET, but when she got to class, the laptop was no longer doing the things which it was doing when she was alone. And the ultimate result was to close the laptop and go back to the traditional way of teaching, where you just simply can you still hear me?
Yes, we hear you good.
Okay, so therefore, as a result, the person ends up going back to their traditional way of teaching and learning and ignore the use of PhET. So I think also the issue of, even without the PhET giving a problem, maybe, or like network or maybe electricity during teaching and learning, I think most teachers would be more worried about time. Even if, for instance, if you look at our curriculum, it will tell you that teaching and learning of the 3 states of matter should be, let's say, 1 week. But most teachers would just look at it and say, 3 states of matter, since they've been doing this from grade 6, and now they're in grade 10. So they can do it probably in a day or two, depending on how long their periods are. And they move to other things because they are worried about finishing the syllabus. So I think the issue of time is a problem with regards to, even if we had to talk about the new the new methods of teaching and learning, teachers will tell you, but I want to have time. You see, when we talk about group your learners into 5 so that they can help each other, teacher will say, I have 50. Now, when I walk in class, then I say, be in the groups of 5. It's a problem. My period is 45 minutes. Now 10 minutes is gone by just grouping them. So teachers, the only thing that mostly they are worried about is normally time. So time is a problem. I don't know whether we need to rearrange our syllabus. Will it help? I don't know how best we can do that, but time, every teacher will tell you that time will be the first issue that they bring up.
Great. Maybe one last question before I take it back to Shola. Martin Sakala says, use of ICT in rural areas is not highly preferred as compared to urban from where I am. I just want to learn from you if you had such an experience. If that is the case, how did you deal with it?
I think it's just the issue of attitude. I think there comes a time when people feel, for us, they will never give us anything because we are in the rural. Because if you check the visits, which also the rural schools will get, are not as frequent as those that they will get in urban schools. I told you that you can drive for over 100 kilometers going to a rural school. And even that 100 kilometers, it's not your simple 100 kilometers on a tar road. It's a difficult 100 kilometers because you are driving on a gravel road, which is also not smooth. And so the teachers there also starts, I think it's just normal to start also developing a feeling that it doesn't matter. You know, I don't know if I could say maybe it's giving up or anything of a sort, but in urban places, yes, teachers are happy to use that, but in rural schools, they feel like even this thing, when this network finishes or my data finishes, will you guys bring another one? Sometimes they say with the gadgets, when we got there, you find out maybe we are missing 3 learners don't have tablets. Then you find out that maybe the department never brought the 3 tablets which were missing for the 3 learners. So it's just, and principals, they are mostly in charge. You know, I don't know how to put it, but it's an understandable situation given also how far the place is. I don't know how to deal with also this comment, but I understand the circumstances, even what the teachers they are going through.
Great, thank you so much. Back to you, Shola.
Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you, Judicial. So as we begin to wrap up, I'll just try to bubble up a couple of the big things we've said. I'm sure this is a very touchy topic, and it's going to be something similar we're going to continue deliberating on. If the experience in our respective countries are the same, you'd agree that the majority of learners are often are based in the rural communities, so they have a critical mass, and they need a lot of these solutions the most. So giving up or not extending or informing or supporting them isn't much of an option. So we need to continue to find innovative ways to take advantage of resources such as PhET and, of course, pedagogies and some of the things that, from all of our conversations that has come to the fore, to continue to find ways that to continue to support and improve how we teach and deliver and support the learners in, of course, gaining a strong understanding and footing in math and science, irrespective of where they find themselves. And some of the things we're doing at PhET, for those of us who might not know, is translating into local languages. Of course, they're available offline. There are many more that, to a degree, out of what PhET would solve. PhET most likely would not bring power to a community. And we expect that, of course, perhaps the government and all of that can continue to, everyone can continue, we all have a role to play. The government, the content providers, the teachers who are more like the last in line in delivering to the learners. Basically, we all have to continue to find ways to support that. So please, as much as conversations around rural can be heavy at times, we need to keep working at it and then find solutions. So I invite everyone. I know there are still questions. I see Beth has just dropped the thoughts or questions that perhaps would not get addressed because of our time. We always want to respect everyone's time. So I invite everyone to continue these questions and conversation in the group, which I just posted in the chat. So please, if you're not a member, please join. And if you're there, you can feel free to just start the conversations. I'm sure you get reactions from everyone and we can continue the conversation from there. So take away from me, or some of the things that has come to the fore is around time is a challenge. So we need to continue to find effective ways to manage time, either taking advantage of the teacher union, or of course, what we have as lab attendants in a traditional lab setup. We just find ways to ensure teachers can maximize the teaching hour or time that they have to get value out of it. Also, there's the project-based learning, and working in groups can be powerful in working with students in rural communities. Of course, that can foster interaction, can help them express their thoughts and ideas, and then, of course, fast track their learning and the experience that they have. Something that also came to the fore is tablets can be powerful, and that can reduce the time in terms of setup. And just like you said, tablets were distributed within schools, so that can help navigate the issue with connectivity, with power and setup time. So perhaps optimizing for tablets might also be something to consider when we're supporting learning and teaching and learning in the rural community. And another thing that came to the fore is to take advantage of existing resources that are available in the teacher community on the PhET website or within our professional learning communities. So if someone has already created a community, we can take created resources, we can take advantage of that so that we can reduce the time of replicating what has been created. And another thing, which this was actually big, is providing tools to this community is not in itself sufficient, but supporting them to effectively use them. At times, having these devices can also be overwhelming, but it should not end there. Empowering teachers to effectively use them, either through training and research resources, definitely is key. And last but not the least, as we wrap up, is it might be important as well to get the buy-in of principals, because if they have a strong understanding and they have you have their buy-in, of course you will be able to having their backing and their understanding can also mean can have them will give you their support to push past some of the barriers that you might also be trying to navigate alone. Perhaps they have more access or insight into things that might not be readily available to us as teachers, and open your head of school to understand what you're trying to do and the tool and how much transformation that can bring can be powerful in itself. I think we're top of the hour now, and so we need to start. We need to draw the curtain here. Always, it's almost never enough time to address a lot of these things, but I would definitely love to take the moment to appreciate everyone who have made time out to join today's conversation. Thank you for making time out. Thank you for your contributions and suggestions. And please, the link is in the chat. We invite you to join the group, and we'll continue the conversation in the group. We'd like to thank our speaker again for his presentation. I don't know if you have any final word as we call it, as we wrap, as we draw the curtain now. Any final words to everyone who has participated, or anything that comes to mind as we wrap up?
No, Chola, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm very happy that we could have our people for community of practice to actually also engage and make comments and ask questions for making things better for us. Because, you know, I remember this morning I saw a picture of a cell phone, or rather a telephone or a phone, I don't know how to put it, 100 years ago, and a cell phone today, two different things. And if you look at how we were teaching people 100 years ago and how we are teaching them today, you will see there's no difference. So it's some of the things that I don't think myself as the young teacher, I should be teaching learners the same way which I was taught. So I have to try and teach them at the best of my ability to also explore and take advantage of these gadgets and technology which is before us. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, speaker, for your presentation. Thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to having you next month. Have a pleasant rest of the day, and see you again in November. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Yes, Elijah, please get in touch. We're happy to partner and collaborate and support in rural and in urban settings, wherever teaching and learning of maths and science is taking place. Thanks. Bye, everyone. See you next month.